I stood at the kitchen sink, washing the same coffee mug I'd already washed twice. The water was running cold by then, but I didn't turn it off. I just stood there, staring at the drain, listening to the silence in a house that used to have too much noise in it. My husband's obituary was still on the counter. I hadn't put it away yet. I don't know why. Maybe because putting it in a drawer would mean it was over. Raymond, my son-in-law, had given a beautiful eulogy 2 days before. He talked about my husband like they were best friends. He talked about loyalty and integrity and the kind of man my husband was. People were crying. I was watching Raymond's hands the whole time. They were perfectly still. Not a tremor, not a fold. The hands of a man who had rehearsed. I told myself I was being cruel. Grief does that. It makes you suspicious of everyone, even the people who love you. I told myself to stop. I almost did. My husband, Harold, passed on a Tuesday. Pulmonary embolism, that's what the hospital said. He was 71, he'd had a knee replacement 8 months prior, and blood clots are a known risk. The doctor explained it in the kind of careful, practiced tone that means they've explained it many times before. I nodded. I signed papers. I rode home in my daughter's car and watched the streetlights go by and didn't say a word. Harold and I had been married for 44 years. We built a business together, a small commercial cleaning company. Nothing glamorous, but it was ours. We started it out of our garage when our daughter Priscilla was 3 years old. By the time she was grown, we had 12 employees and 2 locations and a client list that included 3 office parks and a hospital wing. It wasn't a fortune, but it was a life. It was our life. 4 years ago, Priscilla married Raymond. I want to be fair. In the beginning, Raymond was charming. He was attentive to Priscilla, respectful to us, and he had a good head for numbers. Harold liked him. That meant something because Harold did not like easily. When Raymond suggested coming on as the company's operations manager, Harold thought it made sense. Keep it in the family, he said. Build something together. I was the one who hesitated. I couldn't have told you why. Just a feeling, low and quiet, like a draft under a door. I didn't say anything. I should have. The call came 4 days after the funeral. I was sitting in Harold's chair. I'd started doing that, sitting where he used to sit, I don't know why, when my phone rang. It was a number I didn't recognize. I almost let it go to voicemail. I picked up on the 4th ring. The voice was a man's. Older, a little gravelly. He introduced himself as Dale Hutchins. He said he was the accountant for our commercial insurance carrier, the one that handled our business liability policy. He said, "Mrs. Aldridge, I need to speak with you directly, not your son-in-law. I need you to understand that before I say anything else." I sat up straighter. He told me he had been reviewing the policy for a routine annual audit. He said some disbursement records didn't line up. He said he had flagged it internally 3 months ago and had been waiting to speak with Harold directly, but now, given the circumstances, he felt he couldn't wait anymore. "I think you need to come in," he said, "and I think you should come alone." I told him I would be there in the morning. I didn't sleep that night. Dale's office was in a building downtown, one of those older ones with marble floors in the lobby and slow elevators. His assistant brought me coffee. I didn't touch. He closed the door and sat across from me and set a folder on the desk between us. He was careful. He started from the beginning, walked me through everything slowly, like he was aware he was about to change something for me that couldn't be unchanged. Our business had a key man life insurance policy on both Harold and me. It's standard for small businesses. It protects the company in the event one of the principals passes away. The payout was $400,000. Harold had taken out the policy 11 years ago. 18 months ago, Harold had updated the beneficiary designation, except Harold had been recovering from a hip procedure 18 months ago. He was on pain medication. He was home in this very chair, watching old westerns and complaining about the physical therapist. He was not, as far as I could remember, going downtown to update insurance paperwork. The signature on the form did not look like Harold's handwriting to me, but I'm not a handwriting expert. I told Dale that. He nodded. He said he knew. He said that was why he was talking to me instead of Raymond. The updated beneficiary on Harold's keyman policy was Raymond. Not the business. Not me, not Priscilla. Raymond personally. $400,000 payable directly to my son-in-law upon my husband's death. I put my hand flat on the desk because the room tilted a little. Dale pushed a box of tissues toward me. I didn't take one. I needed a minute to be angry before I needed to cry. I drove home on autopilot. I don't remember 2 of the stoplights. I sat in the driveway for a while just thinking. 44 years. We started with a second-hand floor polisher and a van with a cracked windshield. We took out a second mortgage in 2003 to make payroll when we lost our biggest client. We worked 6-day weeks for the first decade. Harold used to say that building something honest was the only thing worth doing. And Raymond had watched all of that, had sat at our dinner table, had shaken Harold's hand on the day he married our daughter, had stood at the podium 2 days ago and talked about integrity. I went inside and I sat at the kitchen table and I made a list of everything I knew for certain and everything I need to find out. That's the thing about spending 40 years running a business. You stop being sentimental when there's work to do. The next morning, I called my friend Gwen. Gwen and I have been friends since our daughters were in Girl Scouts together. She spent 30 years as an office manager for a law firm before she retired, and she has a steel-trap mind and absolutely no patience for nonsense. I told her what Dale had told me. She was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "Okay. First thing, don't say a word to Priscilla yet. Not until you have more." I agreed. "Second thing," she said, "get yourself to the business and pull the bank records yourself. You're still listed as co-owner." I agreed with that too. "Third thing, if you're going to confront him, you do not do it alone. You hear me? You are not a young woman. He is not a good man, and you are not going to be a hero." I told her I heard her. I meant it when I said it. I went to the business office on a Thursday. Our office manager, a quiet woman named Terry who had worked for us for 11 years, let me in without a word. She looked at me with the particular expression of someone who's been wanting to say something for a long time and isn't sure if the moment has arrived. I asked her if anything had seemed unusual in the last year or so. She was quiet for long enough that I knew the answer was yes. She told me that Raymond had changed the password on the main accounting software about 8 months ago. She told me that 2 of our longest-standing contracts, an office park we'd serviced for 9 years and a clinic we'd had since the beginning, had both ended in the last 6 months. She told me Raymond had handled the terminations personally, and she hadn't been given explanations. She also told me that there had been a man, not a client, not anyone she recognized, who had come to the office twice in the spring. Raymond had taken him into Harold's old office and closed the door. She'd heard raised voices once. I asked her to describe the man. She described someone expensively dressed for the context, impatient, the kind of man who doesn't wait for anything. She said Raymond had been nervous afterward, both times. I thanked her. I told her to please, for now, not say anything to Raymond about my visit. She said, "Mrs. Aldridge, I've been waiting for someone to ask questions for 6 months. I'll keep quiet as long as you need." I went home and I called Dale again. I asked him if there was a way to determine whether the signature on the beneficiary form had been forged. He said he had already initiated a review and had recommended the company put the claim on hold pending investigation. He said it might take time. He said I should also think about consulting a civil attorney. I wrote down the name of the attorney he recommended. Then I sat for a while and thought about Priscilla. Priscilla is my only child. She has her father's eyes and his stubbornness and the same laugh. This low, surprised laugh, like she's always a little caught off guard when something is genuinely funny. She was so happy when she married Raymond. She glowed. I have photographs from the wedding where she looks like the most joyful version of herself. I thought about those photographs for a long time. Then I thought about what Gwen had said. Don't tell her yet. Not until her yet. Not until you have more. I picked up my phone. I picked it down. I picked it up again. I called Gwen instead. The next week was quiet on the surface. I went through the motions, answering sympathy cards, meeting with Harold's personal attorney about his will, accepting casseroles from neighbours. Raymond came by twice. He was solicitous. He asked if I needed anything. He talked about the business, what the next step should be, what Harold would have wanted. I watched his hands both times. The second time he came, he stayed for dinner. Priscilla cooked. We sat at the table where we'd sat for Sunday dinners for 4 years, and Raymond talked about the company's future and what he saw for it. And I sat across from him and smiled and said very little. And I thought about that signature. After they left, I locked the front door and leaned against it in the dark for a minute. Then I went to the desk in Harold's study, the one with the deep bottom drawer, the one I had not opened since he passed. I sat down on the floor in front of it, the way I used to sit on the floor when I was young, cross-legged in front of the radiator. In the bottom of the drawer was a yellow legal pad Harold used for notes. He was old-fashioned about it. He wrote things down. Dates, figures, names. I flipped through it slowly. Near the back, maybe 4 months before he passed, Harold had written a note to himself. It was 2 lines. Check March disbursements. 3 invoices don't match. Ask Dale. And below that, underlined twice, do not sign anything until I talk to Lawrence. Lawrence was Harold's attorney. I sat on the floor of that study for a long time. I called Lawrence the next morning. Harold had been in to see him, he told me. Twice in the last 6 months of his life. Harold had concerns about some financial irregularities in the business. He had been building documentation. He had not yet been certain enough to take action. Lawrence said carefully that Harold had also mentioned changing his personal will to reduce Raymond's access to shared business assets. That appointment had been scheduled. Harold had passed before it happened. I asked Lawrence what my options were. He laid them out methodically. I took notes. I thanked him. I hung up and sat very still for a while. Harold had known something was wrong. He had been building toward it, the way he built toward everything, carefully, 1 piece at a time. He just ran out of time. I was not going to run out of time. The confrontation I had planned was not a dramatic one. That is what I want to be clear about, because I have thought about it many times since, and I know where I went wrong. My plan was simple. I asked Raymond to meet me at the business office. I told him I had questions about the March invoices, specific enough that he would understand I had found something, vague enough that he might reveal more if he thought I didn't have everything. I asked Gwen to drive separately and wait in the parking lot. I set my phone to record before I walked in. I left the door to the hallway open. Raymond was already there when I arrived, standing at the window. He turned when I came in, and I saw, just for a moment, something move behind his eyes, something calculating. He covered it quickly. He was pleasant. He offered me the chair. He said he was glad I'd reached out, that we needed to talk about the business anyway, that Harold would have wanted us to keep it going. I put Harold's legal pad on the desk. I watched him look at it. His jaw tightened just slightly. I told him I had spoken with Dale. I told him I had spoken with Lawrence. I told him I had seen the beneficiary form and I had serious questions about the signature. I told him calmly. The way you tell someone something when you want to watch how they react rather than what they say. He said I was confused. He said Harold had been thinking about the business's future and had asked him to help update some paperwork. He said Harold trusted him completely. I said, Harold wrote this note 4 months before he passed. He was asking about the same invoices I'm asking about. He was planning to meet with Lawrence the week after he died. Raymond looked at the window. Then he looked back at me. He said, You don't know what you're talking about. And then, and this is the part I replay, his voice dropped. He said quietly, almost carefully, I think you're grieving and you're not thinking straight. I think it will be better for everyone, especially Priscilla, if you let this go. The way he said, especially Priscilla, the threat was soft. It was plausible. Someone else might have heard it as concern. I heard it for exactly what it was. I said, I've already spoken with the insurance carrier and an attorney. This is not going to go away because you'd prefer it to. He stood up. He said we were done talking. I let him leave. I turned off the recorder. I texted Gwen, he's coming out. I'm okay. My hands were shaking when I walked to the car. I sat in the driver's seat and pressed my palms flat against my thighs until they stopped. The next 48 hours were the longest of my life since the hospital. Lawrence filed the appropriate documentation with the insurance carrier. The forgery review was formally initiated. The 2 terminated contracts, when properly investigated, revealed that both clients had actually been directed to a new cleaning company. That company had been incorporated 7 months prior. Raymond was listed as a silent partner. He had not just taken from us, he had been redirecting our business to himself, systematically, while Harold was still alive and ailing. On a Friday morning, 14 days after Harold's funeral, Raymond was contacted by investigators. By that afternoon, Priscilla called me. Her voice was the kind of flat that comes after crying for a long time. She said, Mom, tell me you knew before today. I told her I had only known for certain for 2 weeks. I told her I was sorry I hadn't told her sooner. I told her that I had needed to be sure before I blew up her life. She was quiet for a moment. Then she said, He's been sleeping in the guest room for the last month. I didn't want to worry you while you were grieving. We both held the phone without speaking for a little while. She said, Did Dad know? I told her that I thought Harold had been figuring it out. I told her that Harold was careful and thorough and loved her more than anything, and that if he'd had more time he would have protected her. She cried then. I cried with her. The legal process is ongoing, as these things always are. I won't pretend it has been anything other than exhausting. Raymond's attorney is doing what attorneys do. There are delays and filings and phone calls I did not expect to be having at 68 years old. But the insurance claim has been suspended. The business accounts have been frozen pending audit. The redirected contracts are the subject of a civil complaint. And Priscilla, my daughter with her father's eyes, and his laugh and all of his stubbornness, has filed for divorce. I think about Harold every day. I talk to him sometimes, the way you do when someone is gone and you can't break the habit yet. I talk to him in the kitchen in the mornings, when the coffee is brewing and the house is quiet. I tell him I found the legal pad. I tell him I finished it. I tell him I'm sorry I hesitated all those years ago when Raymond first walked through our door. That quiet feeling I had, low and steady, like a draft under a door, I should have followed it. I think the hardest thing about getting older is learning the difference between unkindness and accuracy, suspicion and instinct. I was afraid to trust myself. I was afraid of what it would mean for Priscilla if I was right. I should have trusted myself. If you are reading this and something feels wrong, in your family, in your business, in the quiet hours when you're alone with your thoughts and you don't want to look at what you're thinking, look anyway. Ask the question. Make the call. Pull the drawer open. The truth does not get kinder when you wait. Harold knew that. He spent a lifetime proving it. So do I now. I've been thinking a lot about the word hesitation. Not the kind that keeps you safe, the kind that keeps you comfortable. There's a difference, and for a long time I confused the two. The first time I felt something was wrong with Raymond, Priscilla had known him for maybe 3 months. There was nothing I could point to, no single thing he said or did. Just that quiet, low feeling, like a room that's been closed too long, and instead of opening the window, I shut the door on my own instinct. I told myself I was being unfair. I told myself I was the kind of mother-in-law I'd always sworn I wouldn't be. That choice, that small, private decision to distrust myself, cost Harold and me 4 years of exposure. Maybe more. I don't say that to punish myself. I say it because I think it's important to be honest about where things actually started. Raymond didn't walk in one day and take everything. He took it slowly, a little at a time, the way all sustained deceptions work. And I let it happen because being wrong felt like a character flaw and being right felt like cruelty. That is the thing I want you to understand, more than anything else in this story. Your instincts are not accusations. Asking a question is not the same as convicting someone. I spent years treating my own perception like it needed a lawyer before it could speak. And what I've learned, the hard way, the way that cost me, is that the people who take advantage of trust almost always count on exactly that hesitation. They count on your decency. They count on your fear of causing pain. They count on the fact that a good person will always second-guess herself before she'll risk hurting someone she loves. Harold was building toward the truth in those last months. He was doing what he always did, quietly, carefully, one piece at a time. He wrote it down. He made appointments. He did not let the feeling go just because it was uncomfortable. That was Harold's integrity. Not loud, not dramatic, just steady, just honest with himself about what he was seeing, even when he didn't want to see it. I think that kind of honesty takes more courage than most people give it credit for. It's easy to be honest when the truth is clean. It's hard when the truth means your daughter's marriage might be a lie, or that someone you let into your home was calculating the whole time. Priscilla is going to be okay. She is her father's daughter, that stubborn, clear-eyed, surprised laugh, and she is going to be okay. But the road she's on right now is hard, and part of why it's hard is that the problem was allowed to grow in the dark for too long. I think about that every time I'm tempted to dismiss something I feel. Every time a small voice says look closer and a louder, more polished voice says don't make trouble. The truth does not stop being true because looking at it is inconvenient. And the people we love are not protected by our silence. They are only ever protected by our honesty, with them and with ourselves first. That is what I carry out of all of this. Not bitterness, not regret exactly, just a clearer understanding of what it actually means to take care of the people you love. It means trusting yourself enough to ask the hard question, even when your hands are shaking, even when you're 68 years old and sitting in a stranger's office with a coffee you can't touch. Especially then,